let's do another number, Cedric, before we move on. My number's smaller. It's 1. That's how many Stanley Cups the St. Louis Blues now have to their history. 1 in a dramatic Game 7 after losing at home in Game 6. They go to Boston and they drill the Bruins, and it's the first time they've ever won in their 50-plus year history. People in St. Louis going crazy over the Blues, a team that was essentially out of it in January, now in June wins the whole thing. It's an unbelievable story. Nobody saw this coming out of the Blues, and there's just so much about the Stanley Cup Finals, this story. I mean, start with the fact that the Stanley Cup itself is the coolest thing out there in trophy land. I mean, it was just, I know even people that aren't hockey people were enjoying this one, Cedric. Did you watch any of it? Did you see any of the Blues win it in Game 7?
I saw a little bit of it, Jen, and I'm going to tell you why I think the Stanley Cup is maybe the coolest trophy presentation in all of sports, team sports, that is. It's because the cup is awarded to the players. You don't see an owner or a GM.
Yep.
Like you see the Rooneys and the Maras and Mr. Kraft in New England. You see those guys getting the big trophy in midfield. The Stanley Cup is awarded on the ice to the players.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the coolest traditions in all of sports. A big-time win for that city, a big-time win for that organization, a big-time win for that guy named Scott Berry, I think is his name, who held on to that ticket, Jen.
Yeah.
He got $400 on the St. Louis Blues to win the Stanley Cup. At the time, they had the second worst record in the NHL. He bet $400 at 250 to 1 odds, $100,000 in his pocket, and the whole city is celebrating. I would only hope that we could have a similar finish in the NBA. What a great win, Jen, to go to is it still the Fleet Center or whatever it's called, to still go there, to go there and win 3 games in this series. When you were left for dead in the first month of the season.
Yeah.
That's the epitome of team. That's the epitome of grit and hard work. They didn't complain. They went and they took care of business, and they're bringing a championship back home to the Gateway Arch. That's awesome.
Yeah, and their goalie, who was phenomenal, especially late in the game when Boston scored a late goal after they'd emptied their own net, so they had an extra attacker. It happens, but he was phenomenal throughout that game. The guy was the 4th string goalie when the season started. These Blues, they just have so many storylines, and maybe as much as anything, Cedric, I'm just glad that Boston didn't win something else. They've had the Patriots. The Red Sox are really good right now. The Celtics have been late in the playoffs. Just stop winning. The Bruins was a little bit of comeuppance for the city of Boston. I'm okay with that, Cedric.
I am too, and because Boston's been title town for many years. It goes all the way to boxing. Rocky Marciano and Marvin Hagler, the Bruins from way back in the day, Celtics with Bill Russell, and then the Larry Bird Celtics. It's a great sports area. Let the Midwest get a little piece of love. Shout out to the Blues. Shout out to the Midwest. Finally, Boston loses in something. It's about time.
So they're not gloating all year long. They get a little bit of break, some crow they got to eat. All right.